Welcome to MoDev DC, one of the largest developer-focused meetup groups in the country. When I checked last, and I think we've gotten a few new signups, we had 1,864 members in this group. And as you can see, it's becoming more and more popular. Pete Erickson, the founder of the group, was supposed to run the session tonight, but unfortunately he's had a loss in the family and is attending to that. So I've taken over for the evening. My name is Yermo, and I'm the tech section coordinator. The way we run MoDev is we have 2 meetups a month. One, the first Wednesday of the month, is the tech-focused, developer-focused meetup that I run, where we talk about technical topics. The second is on the third Wednesday of the month, which is a more business investing, startup development focused meetup, and Pete runs those. This month is a little unusual since we have the MoDev UX conference coming up next week. We're just doing one meetup. How many people here are here for the first time? Wow. How did you hear about us on that, what was that program called? Kojonami? How many people have heard about us and are here because of that show? One. Okay. All right, cool. All right, so for all those new people, what we'd like to do is introduce yourself, tell us how you heard about Meetup, and what you hope to get out of it. New people, introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Ayub Benguar. I just started work with Accenture recently, and that's actually where I heard about MoDev. I'm new to the mobile development world, so I want to get as much as I can out of this.
Cool. Next.
My name is Jay Mayers. I'm a principal consultant for Cognizant, leading their mobile department. Currently working at Capital One. I heard about you guys through a coworker, Mary, sitting right here, who on the site is listed as Mary.
Awesome. Next, right here.
Adam Rasmussen. I'm a user experience designer. I mostly work with nonprofits and socially responsible businesses on websites, but I'm just getting into the mobile world. And
Cool.
I'm Sri. I'm a user experience designer at Carbon Creative, and we are getting into mobile. I think I heard of you guys from the IHDA group.
Okay.
IHDA.com.
Cool. Next, Brave Soul, right here.
I'm Devin Barcelona. I'm user experience designer, sometimes front-end developer. And I think I heard about you guys just on meetup.com.
Okay.
I'm not sure. And also just getting into mobile stuff.
Cool. Next.
Mark Horton.
Oh.
I'm a management consultant. I heard about you guys through Steam Bridges. And I just have an idea.
Cool.
Mohammed Abdul Salam. I'm a George Mason student, about to graduate in May, computer science major, and I work in industrial federal economy. I heard about this through this guy right here.
Okay, cool. Anyone else in the back?
I'm Tushar Fonda. I work as a project manager and account manager for an IT company in the Bay Area. And I have also co-founded a company recently by the name of Intelpro. So just here to know more about mobile and networking.
Cool.
And I can learn about meetups or just on the internet.
Oh, cool. Over here.
John Nicholson. I'm a marketing and usability consultant, and started doing a lot of mobile stuff recently, and just found you on Google.
Awesome. Anyone else? Oh, wow. Okay. Here.
I'm Chirag. I really haven't done anything on mobile. I came here because of came here before.
Awesome.
And I'm kind of learning a little bit more.
Awesome. Anyone else? Over there.
I'm Ryan Halperty. I heard about your group through Meetup. And I started a small company called Lion Apps just to develop mobile games and mobile applications.
Cool. Right there.
Hi, my name is Jin Yin, and I'm a software developer. And I used to work for AOL, and about 5 years ago, I started a company in China and online advertising space. And right now, I'm kind of moving back to US and I want to start a mobile network. So I'm new to mobile, but I'm a developer.
Okay, cool. Anyone else?
I'm Derek Stein. I work for a small e-learning custom web development company way out in Hagerstown. I heard of this group through a friend that now works down here. He used to work for us. We've done a couple iPhone and iPad apps. Recently transitioning from Flash. So I'm down here to learn about the future.
Awesome. Any other victims?
My name is Joan Gerler, and I'm in digital marketing. I'm taking a certificate program at Georgetown University in digital marketing management, but things are moving so fast that they just haven't even really had a chance to even talk about mobile yet, and so I'm here to learn everything that I can. I actually used to run a usability lab back in the day, right down the street, during the days of, okay, don't laugh, interactive television.
Awesome.
And I found out actually about Modev from Jason, who was a recruiter at Onward Serve.
Uh-huh. Any other victims? Well, Modev was founded by Pete Erickson back in 2008. He had an idea for a mobile app and tried to get developers to develop it for him. Was unable to. So he founded the Meetup group, and there was such a demand. And like I said, we have grown to 1,864 members. Oh, a quick question. How many people here are looking for developers? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many developers here are looking for work? Okay, the two groups, you guys should talk. Networking will start again at about 8:15 when we... And that's really a key value here, is the fact that we're able to draw in people from across the business spectrum. As I've said to so many, if you're in the mobile space, this is the place to be. So, to continue the growth and to let other people know about Modev, if you like what you hear, please share it out. On Twitter, you can follow us. You can use the hashtag ModevDC to talk about us. We also have a growing group on Facebook where there's a lot of activity, and of course there's meetup.com and the mailing list. Oh, and as far as tech sessions go, we're always looking for topics and presenters. If there's a topic in the technology world, mobile technology world, that you'd like to see us host a meetup about, please let me know. And you can reach me on Twitter. It's Yermo Lammers, or you can also get to me through the Meetup group. You'll notice that we had a whole bunch of pizza, which I think got decimated, didn't it? Wine, beer, soda. Thank our sponsors. They rock. And it's getting to be quite the list. And some of them are Modev DC members. iForm Builder, App47, Mobile Tech, Savvy Apps, I think. And of course, we have some major names. And Womble Carlisle has been with us almost since the beginning, I remember. And of course, Tech Corner, which is kindly providing us with this space and these projectors. If you need temporary office space, this is a place to be. Also, Pete wanted me to let you know about Modev UX. It's the user experience conference, and a lot of the topics that you'll be hearing about tonight will be gone into in more depth at Modev UX next week. Out on the table, there are some small flyers, and I believe there's a discount code. So, at this point, without further ado, I think I'd like to hand off the microphone to our moderator and bring up our panel for the burning questions about mobile usability. John?
All right. Hear me okay? Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm John. I'll be your host tonight. And really our goal here is sort of twofold. It's one, to tell you about the things that we know about mobile usability, and particularly about doing research and finding out what's really working and not working with your mobile app or website. And secondly, for us to selfishly learn as much as we can from you, because I think it's something where it's so relatively new and there's relatively little out there that we very much want to share and hear from you how things have been working, and the reverse. We can tell you all our tips and tricks. So the goal is to be very pragmatic tonight. And also, historically, I used to be a professor, and so I have an iPhone, and it's AT&T, so it periodically drops out, and I can kind of just keep talking and talking, and then I realize about 3 minutes later that there's no one on the line. And so anyway, we can do that, but that's no fun. So what I want you to do is to interrupt us, ask lots of questions, just really make it much more interactive, and that'll be great. Okay, so I just want to say that, whoa, how are we doing? We're losing you. Mayday.
You're dropping out.
I noticed that, yeah. It's a little, I know. See, I told you about the dropout stuff. See, I can also be a professor and shout, but.
Half the people say iPhone, half the people say AT&T. Which is it?
I don't know. Okay, seems to have been working. Okay, I'll move very slowly.
As a user experience, does it make a difference?
There's a good question. So yeah, just very simply, what I want to do is just tell you a little bit about what we want to talk about. And really the bottom line is just this thinking about usability testing and mobile usability, and just how do you record it, what do you find, how do you do it, who should you talk to, when should you be doing these kind of things, what do I need to pay people, what should you be asking, all that kind of stuff. So we just wanted to be very pragmatic and tell you a little bit about that. And logically with UX and usability, there's sort of two things we can really talk about. One is sort of best practices and design kind of things. And the other is really how you do test an app or test an early idea or wireframe or paper prototype and so on. And so today we're focusing a little bit more on the left rather than the right. And I'm happy to talk to you at our 8:15 ad nauseum about design. And I think there's lots of things we can talk to, and we'll probably have lots of questions that come up that are relevant to that. But the majority is what we really want to focus on is usability testing. Uh-oh. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Coming in and out. So yeah, just the two things are, let's just ask and answer questions, and notice I didn't say that I'll be answering or you'll be asking. We want it to go both ways. And also we just want to try and give you some pragmatic tips of the kinds of things that we've been doing in usability testing to try to help you as well. So I just want to say that, you don't actually have to be, this was actually a picture from Google. Thank you, Google Images. This is Office Ninja. The person's on a window frame there. And apparently it was dress-up day at the office. And so anyway, I wanted to say you don't have to be, I have a PhD in psychology, but you actually don't need that to do this kind of stuff. And so I want to tell you as much and share as much as we can with you so you can take it from here too. So just really quickly, I want to see all of you and all your development or design work, how many of you have done some sort of usability testing or research with your audience with your app or website? Great. So is that actually, how many of you were like running that, or that was really your ball game? You do that stuff. Great. Okay, good. Well, then I can sit down and all of you can answer stuff. That's perfect. Okay. And so let's just say hi real quick to everyone. And so I've got myself, and I'll just, if you don't mind, since I got the microphone. So yeah, my background is in psychology, and so my special things are what draws your attention, how you hold things in memory, how you problem solve, stuff like that. And so I've really been applying that to the web and mobile ever since. And yeah, I have my own little company, so we've got our BE there stands for Brilliant Experience, and you'll see the subliminal little happy face there. But the whole point here is really to do user experience and information visualization and early strategy and wireframing and so on. So that's really what Brilliant Experience does. And oh, we're having fun. And actually, for those of you who put your hands up, we're really interested in front-end developers, .NET, and actually I still need more UX people too who love wireframing. So that's John, and so here.
Hi, I'm Corey Lebson. I run Lebson Tech LLC, doing usability testing and evaluation mainly. I also run UPADC, a organization meetup. We have an event next week with Dan Brown. We already have, I think, 90 people registered, so certainly feel free to come to that. If you're here, you'll hopefully like that as well. And I also am on the board of directors of UPA International, which runs all the chapters of UPA, Usability Professional Association, adoption all over the world. There's my logo there, and I've got all sorts of subliminal symbols there as well. But I have been doing general usability outside of mobile since 1994, but I've actually been doing mobile, among other things, since 2000. Two of my earliest projects back then were, I worked for 3 years on a project to integrate mobile into a medical school curriculum, because he said the future, they told these folks, would be mobile. I kind of landed on the project, and sure, whatever, I'll do this. I had no idea they were right, but it was a very exciting project. The other project I did in 2001, this is the coolest project in the world. Sprint PCS, when they were PCS, actually hired me to do a usability study of this awesome topic, which was, do people want horoscopes on their mobile devices? That was it. Do they want horoscopes? Not so much, not so much. And there's a couple new, like little news tidbits too. But keep in mind, these were they had very little data available on these little screens. And the horoscope or the news headline was really the best they could do at the time. But they wanted to do a usability study and try it out. I think it's enough of an introduction for me. So
yeah, sure. And Andre, where'd he go? He was here, right? I don't know who he is. Okay, we're moving on. Here we go. Andre will be our silent partner. Okay. Okay, so just really quickly, for those of you who are developers in the audience, we just want to say, okay, so how many of you have not done usability testing as you've done development and so on? Okay, you can admit it. Come on. Okay, I
can't look now.
Yeah, so we just want to say, just really quickly, what is the point of all this stuff? I can still build a product whether or not I do anything like usability testing or user research, and that's absolutely true. And so here are my responses to those kind of things. So the first is this one. It's actually a little hard to tell. That's $1 billion at the bottom there in bills, all stacked up in plats. So, I guess I'm saying here that, you start with your app and then you do a little usability testing, and who knows, right?
John, do we want to define usability testing, or is everyone clear on what we're talking about?
So the whole concept more generally, right, is just that we want to bring your audience in, we want to expose them to your product or your app or your website and watch them work, see what they do, see what draws their attention, see how they're doing well, see how they're doing poorly, and ultimately try to make your app better. And is that fair? Good. Yeah, we'll be a little bit of a husband and wife here. We do good at bouncing off each other here. So okay, good. So the other thing I just wanted to tell you about is, we can actually catch things that are kind of important sometimes. So in this case, this was just a little story about Jared Spool and the $300 million button. But the key point here was when you're buying, you actually don't want to register. And so he just said, hey, why don't we introduce, scratch his head a little bit. People don't want to register. Why don't we just have a continue without registering button and see what happens? And so sure enough, that was about $300 million worth of income for a very large internet retailer that you can imagine could make $300 million more, and that was a proportion of their stuff. So anyway, the point here is that there are lots of really crucial things we can catch, and we can make your designs and products so much more. So there are two sides to this. One is the side of very pragmatic, like we both have worked with government folks or internal apps and just make things more efficient. But the other side is the sort of persuasive design, and we know about decision making and that kind of stuff too. So we both want to hear it from what are people actually saying, and what we really watch, what are they doing, and try to intuit from that what are the underlying motivations, what are they thinking about, and so on. So, because you actually won't tell us everything that you're really thinking, because you can't. So, okay. So just a couple of points here, just to remind yourself. So, you aren't actually the user of your app, right? So we really want to test people who are truly the potential audience for it, and also, as you try it or you do things, and I've seen people do demos in this kind of situation. They're like, oh yeah, so you just click here and then click here. It's beautiful, right? And then I was like, wait, what were the last 3 clicks they did? Got to try it on me again. And so you know too much about what you want people to do, about where you think they're going to go, and so on. So you go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a great story for you, actually. If I could show you this video I made for a client, I would, but I can't. But basically, the client was using all these in terms that they knew. they all knew these in terms, these acronyms, these abbreviations, and nobody out there did. So although everything was in theory easy to use, it wasn't easy to use because no one could what I would call the sense of information. They couldn't smell their path because they didn't understand what they were looking at, because they were outsiders, and and the client was developing for insiders.
Yep, I have a $1 billion manufacturing software company, and they decided we're going to come up with new terms, and that's how we're going to do branding. It's like, so it's PLM, ALM, SLM, AM, and so you know what all those things are, right? That's really obvious. Okay, me neither. So that's the challenge. So yeah, you know too much. You know too much, and you also don't know enough about really what your audience is after. What are they really trying to solve? And in many cases, we do things to make things easier to use, and then it gets used in all sorts of ways you're not expecting to. So I mean, I think the classic pragmatic example is just all those curbs at the corners that dip down and everyone with the rolly bags uses when it was really designed for something else. So you'll find all kinds of ways that if you make things more efficient, lots of people will latch onto it. So anyway, I think the last thing is just that, hey, the more you can catch these things early. I worked with UBS, and I, right before they're going to go live with something, we tested it. We found these, really dramatic problems with, in this case, it was online banking stuff, and they were like, oh no, it's going to be like 3 more weeks of programming. And they had, honest to God, when I did the presentation, there weren't that many fewer people than this in the room, and like half of them were the developers. Are all going to have to be paid for 3 weeks to fix these changes. And I was like, okay, you can either have me and my sticky notes, or you're going to have all these people working for 3 weeks. Which do you think is going to be cheaper? And so you want to catch these things early, and that's exactly the sort of lean UX spirit.
Right. I mean, I think the worst case I've seen is, and this really happened yesterday. I had a conversation with someone, and they said, "Oh, well, we're going to test. We're going to usability testing. We're on top of these things, and we're doing it right. We're doing it right after launch." I said, "You're doing it right after launch?" Yeah, because we've got a launch date. We've got to get it done, so we'll get it done, and then we'll launch it, and then we'll test it. Okay, are you sure about that? And finally convinced them. We moved it back, I think, 3 weeks before launch, which, given the complexity of what they're developing, is probably still not good. But 3 weeks before launch, not a week after launch, is certainly an improvement, a major step up.
Very good. Actually, and this is what we're talking about. What are the ways that you've got other people to do user research before you go live? Any other motivations or other ways you pitched it or got it going in your organization? Go ahead.
You have a story. Not quite. He didn't learn anything from it, but I think most people will. I was working with
I like it already.
I was working with a guy who was running control. I don't know how much people know about power grids, but each state basically has a power grid controlled by one major company. And these guys will trade data back and forth from each other. Actually, what they'll trade is how much power they're supplying. If I'm Oklahoma and you're Nevada, and I give you $500,000 worth of power, you'll pay me $500,000 next month, all right? This guy is running a control for one of these major power companies that will control all of this data. I came in to take a look at this to determine whether our power company way out here in Pennsylvania wanted to work with this or not. He's showing me the software and how great it is, and he says, okay, I'm going to walk you through the steps here. When you get to this button, it's important that you don't click a second time. Okay, I clicked a second time. What happens is, the button, you press it, the screen does not respond in any way. The button doesn't press, it doesn't gray, it doesn't highlight, it doesn't flash. It looks like you missed the screen altogether. I'm clicking with the mouse. So I pressed it a second time. He blew up. He had a fit. He's like, you're just like one of those users, aren't you? You're one of those guys who thinks you should get feedback. Sorry, man.
No more words after that one. Perfect. Thank you. That's exactly the kind of contribution I want. So here's what we want to do. We want to turn to, also this was meant to be burning questions about usability. So broadly framed, we wanted to say, who should you be testing? What kinds of things should you be doing in those sessions? Where should you be doing it? And just literally, what are you doing to record or ask questions or all that stuff? Because you might not have done it before. And so my question to all of you is, are there other questions you want answered that we can integrate into this as we go along?
how do you identify the audience? I mean, do you go from a 10-year-old to your parents to the 90-year-old and get everyone who can't touch a button versus everyone who wants to touch every single button?
Yep.
Or how do you identify your audience for an app?
Yeah, so the question was, how do you identify your audience for an app? That's actually the who is the very first thing. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about in just one sec. That's perfect. But other things is very reasonable.
And I'd also say, if anyone has any questions about the why, we kind of introduced the why, but even going back, if you have still questions about the why, I think certainly those should be fair game as well.
Sure.
How do you account for, within mobile at least, you have now with iOS, Android, and Windows Phone 7 or 8, they're basically 3 different guidelines of how they want you to develop and, what they want you to develop to. How do you account for that kind of methodology of, each one wants you to do something in a different way because they have different ways.
Right. So the question, I'll just repeat it to make sure you heard it, is just if we've got different, essentially user interaction guides that come from the iOS world or from the Android world or the Metro world or whatever, or the next one that comes along. The question is just literally how do you find something that's maximally usable for all those platforms? And so I think that's a great next MoDev DC. No, it's a complicated. I think what we'll do is the best way to do that, I think, is to try to say, here are examples that we've done actually that are cross-platform. Where I'm doing something right now that's Android and iPhone, and even that's enough to challenge anyone to see, okay, well, we got a button in this case on the screen for an Android, and we don't have that button on this one, so what do we do? And those kind of things. I think that's kind of what you're getting at. And there isn't one perfect solution for that. A couple angles are either you're really customizing and making things very specific for each one to really custom tailor it, and the other is you're doing the lowest common denominator. And logically, those are the two strategies, and I'm seeing heads being shaken like, no. Hey, please go ahead.
Just to add to this question, just recently people, like companies are moving to mobile websites.
Mm-hmm.
That is cross-net. So in that scenario, are there any standard guidelines which could be followed? Because I'm recently working on a project for Sabre Travel Networks using HTML5, and we had to target 3 platforms, iOS, BlackBerry, and Android. And we were just struggling to really come to terms with what should be the standards. And they were putting it back to us, saying, you are the subject matter experts, you mobile, so you got to know it. We were just trying to get from them what should be the standard for their audience. So,
yeah,
unanswered.
fair enough. What? And actually, just to give you a sense, so actually I'll let you answer in just a sec. One of the things that I would look at there is just literally the statistics of we want to know, even with Android, you've got the 3 sizes of broadly 3 sizes of screens. Now you've got more like 8, but there are sort of small, medium, and large broadly that you can design to. And so can you make it where essentially it's a little bit more fluid and be able to accommodate those different sizes, or do you have 3 different sizes of imagery and presentation and so on, even just for that, let alone iOS and different high definition screens and so on. So I guess there's not one good solution yet for you. I wish I could hand you, here's the link. Instead, I think what we do is we try, it's a little bit of trial and error where we try and see what's the most common and then make sure that the interactions are what would be expected in the different platforms. It's very pragmatic that way right now. But sure, did you have anything? No? Sure, go ahead.
I had one comment, and that was testing degraded mode. Meaning what I've observed is you've got an app, you're doing high bandwidth stuff, everything works perfectly, and the guy walks into a G network, or goes from Wi-Fi to 3G, and you get that kind of drop-off. So that's something that feeds back from the technical perspective, meaning it's not just the user experience, but it's how the data is being managed and handled in throughput. That's an area that's going to be certainly an aberration.
I'd say that is the user experience. I mean, it may not be, every user experience item has some root in tech, whether it's a development issue, a database issue, a design issue, whatever. But I'd say that is the user experience for sure. If the interface can't handle low bandwidth situations.
Yeah, so we are sometimes pleasantly surprised when we're doing usability testing when things go wrong, because we really do want to see how people are going to respond in those kind of situations. So not that I jiggle with the Wi-Fi connection in the testing room just to see, but we do want to see what happens when things go wrong like that.
Well, I think also in our what I don't know which question word it's under, but I think we might be talking about that more when we talk about different devices, when people should bring their own devices versus a device that we provide. But I think some of that will come out there.
Sure, we're doing well. Maybe one last question. We'll start moving along.
I was just saying, to what extent do you have to segment your customers? So, on Android, you have at least 80 different phones. Netflix had we tested about 1,000 phones before you. But I mean, really, like if you know that these customers are actually using it, you can kind of like forget the tails. I work with the Department of Defense. We develop web applications. We target everything to Internet Explorer 7. The reason is not because we love Internet Explorer, it's because it's the only software that our customers can actually, or the only browser that our customers can actually use. So you don't really have to worry about, other standards. You don't have to worry about developing for a modern browser that will actually work.
Yeah, no, it's right. You have double-edged sword there, literally, where it's either right. You've got something a little out of date that you have to fight with, but you've got just that, and many of the people here do something that's more public, and then there's this whole sea of possibilities. So, okay, well,
I think also we should frame who the customers are, or how we're going to define the customers. Because if we define them by their technology, we get one answer. If we define them by who they are, we're going to get a different answer. And who they are isn't necessarily the technological device that they have, but they're the whole of their experiences with whatever mobile device, their background, their knowledge, their education, perhaps their age as well.
Sure. So here, let's press on. So the idea here, just our first step here is just literally who are we testing? There's a lot of what came up here so far, so let's talk about it. So one thing is just to ask you, how many of you actually do have sort of well-defined groups that you test? So is it obvious that it's 18 to 45-year-olds? So you've got really clear, you're not doing too bad? Okay. So actually, just what was the age group or the audience that you're working with typically? Go ahead.
So we develop business applications, so it's pretty clear that these are professional people that are in the office or out of the office when we're talking about the mobile application. So we have a good sense of their demographics.
Sure. So to give you a sense of some of the things we've been working with recently, each of us, I've had brand new shiny attorneys who are the young associates, and they're like deer in headlights, terrified. They want to get, their equivalent of tenure, right, to be partner. And what do they need to know, and what are they struggling with? And then totally different, we've got people who are double PhDs that do biosciences kind of thing, and they really need for pharma kind of things, very specific needs. So I've got some groups that are pretty well defined. Others are much more all the public. So.
Yeah, no, I definitely have I guess many more of the all the public kind of studies that I do, often more so than a very tightly defined group. And sometimes the groups, when they have, individuals, when they have a problem, they'll say, oh, well, that's for the other group. I had a situation 2 weeks ago where someone who was a fair bit older, he was retired, and the developer said, well, we're going to leave off a home button on our mobile website, and we're just going to have a logo. And everyone knows you click the logo, you go back to our homepage, and it's great. So the guy who he couldn't figure out how to get home, and he's just using his browser, going back, and so finally at the conclusion of the study, we said, oh, the logo actually will go home. Did you know that? And we've got this great clip of him saying, you don't say. That's for the younger folks. So then, immediately after him, a 20-something person comes in, and she doesn't know the logo is home. She goes back. Said, I said, do you know the logo goes home? We said at the end of the study. And then we have the video clip of her saying, no, that's for the techie folks. And you think, okay, well, we've defined the group, and everyone already is self-classifying them. I'm older, I'm not techie, which I find very interesting.
So generally, you only have a limited amount of time and that you can do this kind of thing. And so we'll talk about how many people we should be testing in just a sec. But, broadly, we want to know if it's really well defined that, it's going to be the nursing assistants to the doctor, or it's going to be the general public, and it's 18 to 45-year-olds or so on. The kinds of things we'd want to know are, what would be a representative age range, maybe education level, would they have experience with this kind of thing or not, would they have ever tried this before? Those are the kinds of criteria that you would want to start with, and there's lots more that people get into, but
right.
Sure.
I mean, sometimes I think that I have like the crazy clients, the ones who say, I want one of this, one of that, one of this category, one of that category. It drives absolutely crazy. And then sometimes they pick categories which really don't make sense. There are some instances where I say maybe gender does matter, but often I don't think it matters. Race or ethnicity often will not matter. But they say, well, that's good demographics. And why? So you've got to think about what differences really exist. And I think that's very important. Age, particularly with mobile devices, I believe is going to be a criteria. Socioeconomic status will be a criteria. And just general experience with the device will be a criteria. But other things, don't go crazy about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So let me ask you, those of you who have done usability studies, we know who you are, you put up your hands. How many people have you typically tested in those kind of things when you're talking about your mobile tests? Chris?
10.
Okay, I got 10 and 15. 15 going once. Yeah, go.
Probably more than 50.
More than 50? Okay. And yeah, so actually the defense stuff is the large scale. If you're working with one of the carriers, they're like, well, we're going to do like 300, right? But all of you who are doing startups are like, well, can I get away with 2? So we want to kind of talk, or is 2 too many? So what's typical that you've seen?
So basically the way I would define it is not so much as a typical number, but the first very important question that I would pose is, how do we need to break out our findings? If you tell me that we can get a representative sample, and that representative sample basically will represent everybody, and we're not going to start segmenting. Well, how is someone who's 20 different than someone who's 30, is different than someone who's 40 and 50? It's a very different answer than if we do need to say, I need to look at the 20-year-old segment. I need to look at the 40-year-old segment. We've got the general demographic. Keep moving away. We've got the general demographics approach. I think we can often find what we need in 6 people. However, I will never tell a client only get 6 people because A, there's always no-shows, and B, sometimes we have to rotate questions. Someone will take so long and struggle so much with something that we don't get through all the tasks, and that might happen. And so we'll start rotating tasks out. So even though each task might need to be represented maybe 6 or 7 or even 8 times, and that's it doesn't actually happen in reality.
Right. So, and just to give you, there's the Norman Nielsen group. So the Nielsen of that group has talked about guerrilla usability testing for a long time, even when he's working back at Sun. The idea that he had with the web was, hey, after about 4 people, you can get a large majority of the major things that are wrong with your site. And so that was with the web. I think in this case it's a little trickier, but I just wanted you to know that you shouldn't, when we're starting out and trying to see what are the big gotchas, you shouldn't necessarily say we have to test 300 people or nothing. You want to start with a small sample and work your way up. But typically what we're doing often is probably in the 15 to, well, I don't know, it's probably the 10 to 30 range. Is that fair?
I mean, I'd say a typical study, I'd recruit 14 people. I would only actually do the study with perhaps 10 because there's always no-shows.
Sure, there was a couple, actually, sure, go ahead.
Quick comment, that was an interesting paper I read a couple of years ago in graduate school. It had to do with an usability case actually involving people we're going to be using during the development project. Specifically, it was a sunglasses store that sold sunglasses, and they actually brought a development team into the store with a program manager and interacted with customers as they came in to evolve the product. They actually did it within like a 2-week period. So it was an interesting perspective on usability testing as part of the actual design and development with your actual intended user.
Right, and I think both of us were chomping at the bit to say that, that as much as we can have it in the sort of early prototyping stage, and when we get to, we actually keep moving, so we get to everything. But the more that we can get it in early stage and catch issues then, the better we can do at, say, less development cycles and more catching the big things first. But
Right. I mean, I'd also say that often, that's more framed kind of as ethnographic research. I love ethnographic research. It is just, you learn so much about the target audience by just watching them.
Sure, there was a question. Please, go ahead.
Well, when I ran my lab, we did sort of a two-step process. And one was what we called, for lack of a better word, informal usability testing, which was really at the early stage, almost prototype stage. And that was done in-house. And then after we got the results for that, we worked it through the system, et cetera, we then hired an outside third-party firm to handle a much larger, more formal, more comprehensive usability test to remove any potential bias. Because when you're doing things in-house, do you not risk a lot of bias in those in-house tests? And is this also an appropriate model, in mobile use?
Don't you like this? Isn't it great? Don't you like? Isn't it a really good app? Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Yeah. For sure. So absolutely. So here, I'll move us to be a little bit more rapid fire, so we get a little. We'll get the pace going here for you. One quick thing is just literally when you're recruiting people, should you pay them or not? I think it often depends on your audience. So I've got people who are government folks that we actually can't pay very much to, so a Starbucks gift card is just right, and there's a little thank you. It's better than just a handshake. And other audiences, like when we were doing neurosurgeons for NIH, well, they needed like $250 to talk to us. So
Right. I mean, I would say that for a general public, I generally tell clients $100. $100 is enough, and the risk is a too low amount increases your no-show rate. It increases the amount of days that you need to be doing research when people don't show up. So as a rule of thumb, I think that's good. When I have done it for free, I can't pay them, the no-show rate is tremendous.
So it's about the internal motivation. In some cases, people have some horrendous internal app and they're desperate for a solution. All those people will show up wonderfully right on time and early, and then you got to shoo them out of your office by the time they're done. So it does depend on the situation, but I think that sort of so the starving graduate student to a young college student, $50 no problem, to the $100 for a typical person, to our sort of high end. When we were doing the high net worth people, they were like, well, they want the moon, but they settled for about $300. So.
Right. And remarkably, food, giving them lunch, come in, get a sandwich, is a big incentive. It doesn't cost as much, but it's a tangible benefit.
Internal people, if you can give them a day off, man, they'll be there. Okay, so we talked a little bit. Actually, is there anything else about audience before we move on? I think we did pretty well. Okay, see, I asked that question in a very biased way and got my biased answer, so that's what you have to be careful with when you're doing usability testing. Okay, so literally one of the questions here is just, what are you testing? How are you going about this? What sort of level of fidelity should you be testing at? And so I really just wanted to use words, and this is just an example of a paper prototype where someone's literally trying to, move things around underneath a sort of iPhone-like look and trying to make it work that way. So there's someone else who's pulling little tabs to try to make it feel like it's going. And so the question is, what level should we be doing this at? Should we actually be testing your audience at an early sort of what we'd call a paper prototype level, where it really is just moving things back and forth just to get a sense of, do they get a sense of the flow or where they would click or what they would do? Or should we have some sort of wireframe that we can put in a device, or perhaps even on the web, even if it just looks like a phone? Or should it be, really just like the app would be at the very end stages? So I've got the high fidelity beauty there. And then lastly, should it actually, all the interactions like connection to a database be live, right? So we've got this sort of range. And so let me just ask all of you who have done usability testing so far, what level were you testing at? Sure, go ahead.
I'm doing mostly the wireframes and some high fidelity stuff.
Okay, so wireframes and high fidelity. Sure, Steve.
All levels. I think
it's better to focus on the first two and a little less on the last two, but yeah, we tested at all of them. And it worked out. We got a lot of input into it.
Okay, good. Sure, please go ahead.
I've only done on the third and fourth, and it's always a huge problem because you discover like tremendous problems that then you have to go back and you could easily have seen, had you just done something.
Right, so in the government we can talk about user acceptance testing, which is like, we have all the features and it's working correctly. And then if you actually do a usability test at that point, that's when you catch that, oh my gosh. So there might be something big. And so I really do encourage you, so I think the right answer here is really we want to do all of the above. Maybe we're just testing a few people at each stage, but the earlier that we can catch big problems, the better. So it is very common actually to do any of these. I just want to say one thing, that sometimes we have to do the high fidelity beauty stage simply to get stakeholder buy-in, so that the higher level people being willing to show it to the potential audience. Sometimes that's the reason why you do it at that level, not because the audience needs it at that level. So there can be political reasons, what you want to consider here too.
Right, so several things I'd add. One, you talked about UAT, and one of the things that kills me is when people say, we've done UAT, we're all set. So I totally agree. But second is when I would say to a client who says, I'm really rushed, I can only do this once. When should I do it? And my answer usually is, at whatever point is the latest possible point when you can scrap a lot of stuff and start over again. If you feel like you can make it all the way to all interactions working and then scrap it all, more power to you. If you think that you can make it through a high fidelity prototype and then scrap that and start over, or not start over, just make a lot of changes, great. But it's not, I don't have a hard and fast when I answer the question.
So just to be pragmatic, those of you who are more on the development side, okay, what are we talking about here? Is it going to be on the phone? Is it going to be on my laptop? What are we talking about here? In many cases, we would do things in something like Axure, AXURE, or iRise, and that lets you do sort of a clickable prototype. In many other cases, we just wire it up quickly with HTML, CSS, so that we can drop it into a phone and use something like PhoneGap to get going quickly. So I just want to say that in general, we probably, even if we're doing the wireframe level, we'd try to have it as much as we can in the device to get it working. Agreed? Sure, go ahead.
What are types of problems that you see that only show up when you get to the high fidelity stage?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the question is, are there any problems you get only at the high level fidelity? Like, do you need to have the high fidelity one for the problem to show up? And I think there's sort of two answers that I give. One is, so by and large, the biggest problems, no, we'll catch them earlier, except for if there's some unusual interaction we might be doing, like a two-finger swipe, or something where it actually really takes the pinch or something, and people have to know that that's what they have to do. So we do need to get to that level of letting them actually try to do that to catch that.
Well, I can give an example. Sure. Did a study where there was a mobile form, and you entered the city. The designers didn't take into account that autocorrect would add a space after the city. There was no trim function, and the autocorrect of the city crashed the app. Just dead because of that space, because of autocorrect, and you could only do it at that point on a fully functional app.
That's a good example. Sure, go ahead.
What are you qualifying as testing? Is it a UX lab, or is it just showing your friends? Or what are you talking about?
Yeah. So fair enough. Let's talk about it. Excellent segue. He was saying, okay, what are we talking about here? Is this a lab? Is this just telling it to your friends? Is your mom checking this out? What's going on? So, and actually, I wanted to give you the logical extreme. So one is, right, people down the hall trying it out. To, in this case here, they've got a Tobii eye tracker, so it's TOBII. And so we do stuff with, there's actually, in this particular case,
which is, by the way, like a $40,000 device?
Yeah, it depends on who's the salesperson, so give me a call.
Right.
But right here, we've got an infrared camera. It's that infrared camera is trying to figure out where their eyes are. And you can see in this case, the device is actually, it's actually double-sided tape, but it's really bolted to the machine there, so that it has to be in a static place, right? Which is certainly more artificial than what you're typically used to. So the question is just literally, where are we going to do this testing and what sort of conditions? And so this is the one logical extreme. The down the hall, asking a friend is the other end. So let's talk about the middle. And so it really is the, is this in my office? So if I'm doing stuff at USA Today, is it actually in the Gannett building or not? Or are we talking about a focus group lab, something like that? Or actually should it be out on the street and that kind of thing? And really you can do any of those. Let me just actually ask, those of you who have done mobility testing so far, mobile usability testing, sorry, I made a new word there. Where have you done it? So go ahead, please.
On the Metro.
On the Metro, that's good. No, it's fair enough.
Starbucks.
At Starbucks, okay, excellent.
It usually starts in the office, and then we do a lot of stuff for kids. So one of the recent things we did, we had a little high school, went through that and let them try it out. And then, so it usually starts in the office and then goes outside.
Okay, I think that, so he said starts in the office and goes outside. Go ahead.
Right, so my answer to that is wherever you can find the users. I do a lot of studies for some of my projects with disaster survivors, people who have...
Don't we all?
Right, now people whose homes have been flooded, whose homes have been destroyed by tornadoes, and to find them, I've actually have to locate a recent disaster and rent a hotel room and go out there. And I've done that a number of times, sometimes with mobile, sometimes with web, but I just can't find them locally. I mean, I can't find people who meet all my demographic criteria, have the right mobile devices that they're designing for, and are disaster survivors in the DC area.
So, and I think that sort of pragmatically, what I heard here was exactly the way it typically happens. At first, you're starting out with people essentially down the hall just to see if there's anything really, really wrong, and then you're getting to the more authentic users as quickly as you can. So I think my answer is this, that there are actually good reasons not to do it in your office. So I do stuff, for example, with Care First. We don't ever do it in a Care First building because they walk in as the big shiny double glass doors. They get signed in to Care First, so they had better not say anything not nice about Care First when they're in there, right? And you know that somewhere else they might be willing to do that. So we want to get them in that somewhere else. It's pretty reasonable as long as you can have the sound and stuff right, or it's realistic conditions to do things in the Starbucks or the Subway, if that's where the thing is going to really be used. The challenge usually, I would give myself about double the time that it would need otherwise to do it in that realistic situation. There are academic studies of the variance between doing it sort of in situ versus doing it in a lab, and often the major things actually get caught in both cases. So we really, the only sort of logical extreme there is I remember doing some things for tank screens, and so you have to recognize this tank screen's going to be bouncing up and down. So if it's just sitting there in a lab and you got perfect light, it's going to be really different. So you just want to know, is that situation could be really, really different or not? So our things, 90% are in a location like a usability testing lab, or simply an office that's not my client's office. So, because we can set up pretty much anywhere. The rare case is where a series of clients really want to watch, and in those kind of situations, we can do something where we broadcast from one room to another, or the highest end of that is you can rent a focus group space and have the one-way glass and let them watch from there, and they have to have a lot of M&Ms there for the clients. Don't ask me why. Okay, so we're good. Okay, we better segue from there. Okay, quick question: should it be on your phone, your individual phone that you use? How many of you actually have your phone within reaching distance when you wake up in the morning? Yeah, so that's your baby. So should it be on that person's phone, or should it be on the phone that you hand them?
See it on the user's phone.
Yeah, when we can, we want to see it on the user's phone for a couple reasons. So one is actually the one that you gave about bandwidth and stuff like that. If someone's got all these crazy apps that are miring up their phone, it's better for us to know now that that's one of the issues. Or they use some really unusual browser as opposed to the browser that came with the device. So yeah, as much as we can, we try to do it on the person's phone. So that does pose some challenges with things like recording, but I think it's worth it. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, with the Android question, with the screen size, when you have people come in just with whatever random devices they have, you can recruit for Android if you want, like recruit 50% Android, and then you just let them roll in with whatever they've got.
Right, and we get really dramatic differences in the kinds of styles, ages. So you can say, you might recruit for people who have, a device they've bought in the last 3 years or something, where 3 years to us is an enormous dinosaur and may or may not be for other folks. So
My touch. that's what people come in and they're like,
Nice.
like, what is that? Yeah.
Okay, good. So I think we're sort of unanimous here. Unless you really have to do it on your device, we really want to see it on theirs.
One small caveat. If you're studying text messaging, I have found that I can use my own device. It doesn't matter because if they get the concept of texting, they get the concept of texting, and if that links out to a web page, and then there's not that much on the web page itself, it hasn't been a big deal. But that's the only time that I felt comfortable using my own device.
Okay, team. Sounds good. Let's see, so just literally, I actually wanted to find the geekiest picture I could. And so these are people so imagine these people on the subway, right? What would happen to them? So the idea is here that they've got like a microphone and cameras and everything else. And I've got some of my cameras here just to give you the logical extreme here too. But the question is just, how should you record it? What are the questions you should be asking, that kind of stuff. So we haven't even got to, actually, did we answer your question about, where to do the test? Okay, the next question is, what should we be asking of people, right? Do we just let them go for it and say, here's an app, good luck? Or do we really ask them, try to get this, then try to get this, and then try, and so on? So there's that kind of question. The second is, how do you record? So here, let's give it a shot. So the one thing you could do is really have a free use of a device and just say, here's the app, explore, have fun. And the second is where we say, okay, can you start the app, please? Okay, now I want you to look, now I want you to solve this problem. How would you go about doing that? And so the question is, which of those two should we be doing, and or why and when? And so let me just ask all of you how you would answer that first, and then we always have an opinion, so that's boring. So we want to hear you guys. Sure, go ahead.
Both.
Okay, I heard both. Okay, go ahead.
I would see structured interview as a case where you want to test, all right, this person's probably going to use this app only in a certain condition, so you probably want to ask and get the data from that. Free use, where it's open-ended.
Okay, so the thought is structured might be where there's a key situation you need someone to problem solve with the device, or there's a very clear end goal that people might have, and really make sure they hit that goal.
Can we define structured interview? It's not an interview perhaps like we would think of it.
Oh, point well taken. So the idea, well, here.
Okay. So a structured interview, often it's task-based. You have a series of tasks, and they simulate a situation they may have experienced. You are doing this, you're doing this, go do it. Not so much, so what do you think about?
Right, so it's nowhere near a focus group. The goal here is to get people to accomplish certain things, and we don't tell them how to do it at all. We watch how they would do it, but it helps to direct them in general. So, okay, and I think really go ahead.
Well, that's something, you can finish your thought.
Okay, I'll finish my thought. So we thought we'd do so well, But what I was going to say is that really I would argue that you first want to see what are their first reactions totally without any conditions. So where are they going first? What are they trying to do first? What are their first anticipations of what they're seeing? And so we want to see that behavior as much as we want to hear them. We really want to watch them do the things. So, and then from there, once we've seen their sort of first things they're most interested in, then we would go ahead and make sure we catch all the functions of the tool.
Right. So what I would add is I usually believe free use is good to a point, but if it goes on too long, they get too many clues about their tasks, and it kind of messes things up. So for a very limited time, or we say take a look at the home screen and no clicks allowed, something like that. Also for free use, when we do it and let them click around, I believe very strongly in what's called a think aloud protocol, which basically means do whatever you want, but you better keep talking. And if you stop talking, I'm going to say, what are you thinking? Because sometimes, and there's a number of different opinions on that, but if you keep them talking, it doesn't interfere too much with their experience, and you get a lot more insight into why they're doing what they're doing.
Right, and there are good studies to show also that you can let people do, to a certain extent, exploration quietly and then say what they were doing as well just after that. So there is a balance to be struck between the different ways. There are umpteen flavors, and we can get into that religious war later. But the key thing is just you want as many insights as you can, and while we want to hear what they're talking about, we also want to make sure, first and foremost, we're watching their behavior, because they can't all describe what they're doing. If we're doing eye tracking, we very much don't want them to talk at first, because that can interfere with just literally eye movements. With the phone, it's actually not as wide a field, so it's not as big an issue. Any other comments at this point? Sure, please go ahead.
Does talking interfere with the eye movements?
Oh, it's sure.
Well, they look at the interviewer. When they want to talk to you, their eyes just go right, and they start looking at you, not the device.
Yeah, so there's some very pragmatic. We can talk about other things with like multi-attentional conditions, but sure, go ahead.
I guess, I mean, from a DoD kind of standpoint, how do you account for like 508 compliance in that instance?
So I've done a number of usability tests on websites with people who are visually impaired. I have only done 508 heuristic reviews of mobile to date, where I have not done a mobile accessibility test. But for a mobile heuristic review, basically they give me the device, and I have a test bed of Android and iPhone devices, and test it out myself, simulating a blind user. Basically, I can turn off the screen. So that's how I account for it.
Yeah, and the answer is there isn't any hard and fast, 508 mobility. We're thinking much more of the spirit of it at that level than, that for an image it has to have something that when you hover over it on a mouse or in the web that it has to have, there are some things like that are sort of black and white, and there are some things that aren't, but there are many that are for 508 for the web. And I think you're right, it's a pretty gray area right now on what that should be. Actually, there was another question back here. Please go ahead.
Sometimes you use usability to determine which is better, two or more different user interfaces. When you do something like that, is it best to split the groups up into separate groups, or to give the same guys the ones and have them compare it? That's one of the possibilities.
Yeah, no, so thank you for that segue. I very much appreciate it. So actually, there are great studies of this, and you can just intuit this too yourself. So let's just do the little thought experiment. If you show them one site or one mobile app or one mobile site, and you say, so, at the end, how was that? If you rate it, 1 to 10, what do you think? They're like, yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, not bad. And if you give them 3 sites, they're like, oh my God, number 2 sucked. I can't believe, but please do things like number 3. So when you get the contrast, they naturally gravitate to, I really like this feature and I really hated that one. So giving them contrast actually gives you much more perspective. So we do want you to test your competitor sites. We do want you, or competitor apps. We do want you to actually have different designs that you do head to head as well.
Right, so the way that I do it when I do A/B testing, although I've done ABCD testing, is basically to have, if I have, let's say, 3 different looks to the same site, 3 different skins to the same site, I could, for example, give the first person number 1, second person number 2, third person number 3 to do the actual usability test. However, what I do is, after they do whichever one they do, I show them the others often on paper, and just say, okay, this was what you just experienced. What about this and this? And just let them look at the end and do the comparison that John was saying.
Yeah, and actually this gets more important to the point you had of, are there any things that you catch sort of at later stages? And sometimes those interactions with mobile, if we can give them those contrasts, that can be a really big difference. So naturally, if we have more than one design, we do a Latin squares design. So, first person gets number 1 first, second person gets number 2 first, third person gets number 3 first, and so on. Okay, good. Any other points? Please go ahead.
I wanted to add something to the question about how eye tracking is changed by talking. The biggest point I've seen working in a pre-designed setup where you're looking at the user's face, you're hearing what the user's saying, you're hearing what they're mumbling, you're watching what's happening on the screen, you're controlling it. The biggest problem with eye tracking and talking at the same time is they start looking for the right answer rather than what feels natural to them. They start looking to show you that they can do what you're expecting. So instead of clicking on what makes the most sense, they look around real quickly, and it completely screws up your data.
So that's one reason for doing sort of free viewing when we're doing eye tracking as well. Okay, good. I appreciate that contribution. So the last thing here really is just how do I do any sort of recording of what happened? Because it can be incredibly convincing to you, but you have to bring it back to the development team or the group where we say, hey, it's going to take us another 2 weeks and this many dollars. So what do you say? Is it worth it? And we really want to make the pitch that actually, yes, it is. And so the question is, how do you record these kind of things? So I just want to show you some examples here. We each have our own, I've got a little thing here I'll just show you live here in a sec. But to give you a sense, this was something that Google did. They ripped out the halogen light from this bendy lamp that actually has a pretty solid base, so it could stick out for a ways. The challenge here is you have to have a pretty you have a predefined area that the phone has to be in, and you can't tilt it too much, or it's really tough to see, right? So that's one logical possibility. Another variant here, affectionately known as Mr. Tappy. So this one here is something where you essentially double, again, both this and the Toby one, you get double-sided tape and you stick it to the device. And so when you're using everyone's device and they're ending the thing and you're giving them the check and they're peeling this last bit of double-sided tape off their phone and cursing you, just be acknowledged that that's a challenge with this sort of style. But it can work where you've got it attached to the device. And this one here is just really flexible, so you can do lots of adaptions. This one actually is something that you can buy in a store. Similarly, this one here on the left is a little more homegrown. The right one is actually a camera you can buy. I'll try to set up some of the links to this when I post these slides. And they actually used just a really large binder clip or a closed clip that they attached that bendy USB camera to. And so you can see the challenge is it looks like it's kind of eating the Android phone there and stealing a little bit of the screen, right? So there's no one perfect solution to this kind of thing. I'm going to show you also how you can just obviously mirror a screen too, and that's the ideal. And so just, sure.
Why don't you use the camera in the phone?
Oh, no, okay, here's the question. So, no, totally good question. So the question is, could you use the camera in the phone to show what the person is seeing? And actually, each of these cameras here are pointing down towards the screen. What we're interested in recording here is not just what's on the screen, but also how they're interacting with it. Are they trying to pinch? Are they trying to touch something and nothing's happening? Are they trying to hit the center, right? Are they shaking it, right? What are they trying to do? It's like, actually, it's not as crazy as you might think. More people shake it than you would anticipate. So, these cameras, thank you for asking the question. The whole point here is to see what are people doing on their screen.
Well, so I have done two cameras, one on the screen, one on the person, for picture-in-picture.
So here, actually, let's just go there. So
I'll also add, by the way, for my high-tech mobile recording, I use a $8 banana holder I got on Amazon.com. I attach a Logitech HD Pro C610 webcam, and that's it. Which is the same webcam I use if I'm just doing a regular website usability test.
Okay, so sure, go ahead.
I also did see on the website, this guy's an Australian DIYer, and he made his own kind of camera holder which fits into an iPhone case. So it does not have to stick onto the phone. It does not have a clasp onto the phone. It sticks to the case. So you can have that case with you.
That's cool. Yeah.
And just leave it on a phone.
Okay, I have this going. So one of the things that you can do also is, I don't know if you know, but this reflection is a nice tool. In the new version of the Apple OS, this will actually be a function that's built in, but we can get it here. Hold on one sec. So I've got it where what's on my phone, you can see both what I'm doing as far as motions go. It's because I'm projecting, it's actually going a little bit in slow motion, but the idea is that I can catch. Actually, who's my volunteer for today? Where's Yermo? We need him. Sure, come on up, Adam. Thank you. So yeah, Adam, why don't you just go ahead and surf the web for me?
You kind of need to identify what is what on the screen there.
Yeah, let me go. Hey, I know. Why should I tell you? No, it's a very reasonable question. So the see, it's a usability issue, right? Okay, let's take slow motion here. So this camera here is this one right here. I'm using a thing called EvoCam that just lets me suck in more than one camera. The one built into my device is the one on the lower right. I actually have a little, what's called like a sled. So the idea here is it's got a little bit of grippy stuff on it. And the nice thing about this is if someone wants to flip back and forth between different directions, they can. And I've got a camera that's actually attached to a bendy piece of metal here. You can come up and, it's a company called Sykester that has made these for, anyways, just like a mom and pop thing where they're willing to just make them for people who want to buy them. But here, you can go ahead. And so the idea is to get the camera sort of set up so that we can see what he's surfing on the web here. We can see where his hands are going. So we see a couple different directions of how his hands are going. And then we can also catch his face to see him horrified at what's working poorly or delighted with what's working well. And what I do is I just take one of the screen capturing tools and record all this all together. So then you have basically more than enough here, right, to capture what's going on.
Well, I'll also add to that, if you use GoToMeeting or WebEx and have good bandwidth, and everyone who's watching has good bandwidth, you can actually use them and stream images like this. And it's worked successfully for me.
Right. There's a company that called TechSmith that has more. They have an infinite supply of these tools. Moray is a tool by TechSmith, and it's custom built to capture screens and then also broadcast it somewhere else. And someone else can actually, if you really, so for the government folks, you can actually measure how long a task is taking, stuff like that, and predefine some, like, here's the start of task 1, the end of task 1, and then you can suck out those videos as well.
Right. The only caveat to Moray is that the client needs Moray Observer on their machine. So when you use GoToMeeting or WebEx, you just it's free, as opposed to Moray where you need to actually purchase software to view it.
Wow, that was impressive. Okay.
I broke it. Hey.
There you go. See, that's why we do usability testing. So anyway, you get the sense that what we want to do is really get. So first of all, the nice thing about this is you can get a really clear view of what's on the screen for the person who's watching in the home office as it's going live. And then the second thing is we can see where their hands are going. And then the third is we can see their face. So this is a little different than on just a traditional website, because in that case you can just see where they're clicking and so on. So we want to know, are they trying to pinch? Are they trying to type something in? Are they having trouble? Are they using 2 thumbs or just 1? Are they using their index finger? Are they using their pinky? I don't know about how many of you, I've seen someone do it with their pinky. So they're all the things you wouldn't expect. So actually, are there any, so see, he turned it and this automatically turns itself too. So it's kind of a neat little tool. So it's called Reflection is the app. And it's, anyway, that one's about $15. The Sykester little contraption here with the camera was about $80. He threw in the camera, and it's got a microphone right there, so you can pick up the sound really well. And then the other thing we're using is here's EvoCam, because it allows me to do several cameras at once. There's a free version of that kind of thing with the Windows version. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, are all of these multi-platform in terms of Windows, Mac?
Yeah, so this one is very Mac specific. We also have, there is an Android equivalent of this one too, of being allowing, oh, by the way, just with the Reflection, this is something that's built in AirPlay for the iOS device. So I didn't have to put any software on an iPhone if you got an iPhone 4S. The older ones don't work, but the most modern ones will work with this system. So first of all, I'm not putting any software on the device here, so that can work with this. The other, there is a, do you guys remember what the name of the mirroring software is for Android? It's a Java application. It's Android 2. Anyway, if you Google Android 2 and mirroring, you'll get it. It's literally Android and the number 2, and I'm blanking on the last few words, but sure, go ahead.
Are you simply just recording to the hard drive?
Yeah, I'm just recording. Yeah, that's right. I'm recording to the hard drive in this case.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm recording the screen capture at this point. So I don't know of any software that can record on the device. I don't know anything that can broadcast the, simultaneously broadcast what's on. What they're looking at from the camera in the phone, and then also, broadcast what's on the screen to my computer, right? Because I would love to have that. So there isn't one perfect app for this. If supposing there's a developer here that's interested in making something, anyway, we'll talk. Go ahead.
So you're saying that what's recorded on your hard drive is the high res of the phone?
It's actually everything you see on the screen right now. So yeah, the whole point is to do screen capture. So what I'm recording is three different cameras and a high-res image all together. All together.
I will point out, when you do this, don't do this alone. Make sure there's someone monitoring your cameras when you're doing things like this, because inevitably something's going to get off, and you'll be talking with the participant and not realize it, and get some cut off somewhere in the wrong place.
Yeah, so go ahead.
The Reflection doesn't need a camera to work, does it?
The Reflection app does not need a camera. So if you just simply wanted to record what they were looking at, so you didn't have to stare over their shoulder, the Reflection is actually a really nice tool, as is the Android 2. And actually, someone can Google that for me and tell me what it is, but it's killing me. So yeah, that was really, I just wanted to say, what are some of the tools out there? The other thing, if you have a document camera, that's what some groups use. Again, the challenge with that is that you have to have it in a specific, you make a rectangle on the desk, and by God, you got to have that thing in the rectangle. In this case here, we like this one because they can kind of, some people pace, some people move around a fair bit, and in this case here, we can allow them to do that kind of rotation and things that are natural.
Right. I can't stress enough the value of a video highlights that you would give to somebody. I mean, I could do a PowerPoint or I could do a Word document or whatever, but when people watch the video of the same people over and over and over again having trouble, and if you put it together just so, and there's plenty of free tools to do that, it makes such a powerful point.
Cronus X.
Cronus X is one of them, yes, thank you.
X-bounds.
Yeah, so it's time, oh yeah, it's 8:15.
You can go another 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, no, we're doing good. This is right where we were, is in summary. So I just wanted to remind you one more time, so your app plus usability testing is a sleds full of money. Okay, and so we just had the who, what, where, and how, right? So we had the why we covered at the start, but just who is the representative audience as much as we can. What is as early as possible. Oh, it's interesting. There's a text. Testing things at the earlier stages if we can. I think it was Steve that mentioned, if we can do paper prototyping and early wireframing and catch things early, catch them often right at the start, that's the best place to do it. So we find that it really is effective. It can be really effective to do it where we aren't worrying about colors, we're not worrying about full interaction, we're catching the basics at that stage. The where that we asked before was just, we want to do it in the location where people will be typically doing it. So if it's loud in the subway, that's the ideal. It is going to take you more time and more effort to do it in that sort of situation. And then lastly, just the how. I think we talked a little bit about some of the tools you can use. And I think lastly, just making sure that we do a little bit of letting them free use the tool. And then secondly, really trying to make sure we cover the things that we really want the app to accomplish. But that's really it. So we want to be very pragmatic today. We can be highfalutin, do all sorts of cool design stuff next time, but that's where we wanted to go.
Right. I want to add, though, so Pete put us both on a mobile usability panel at ModeWX, and I think then we only have 25 minutes. So if we were to focus on any one of these things when we have a lot less time to kind of zoom in, is there any one area that's kind of the most salient, the most of interest?
I would say how, because that's what a lot of people would. I mean, I think most people will know why they need to do it, especially people at the conference. It's more how to do it. Like that's the thing I learned as a user experience person is I didn't know how to do it, do the mobile stuff. So.
Cool. Any last questions or comments? Sure, please go ahead.
I think after the how, the second one is the what. How can I get the most out of my software? Even if it is a $5 Starbucks car, how do I make sure? And how do I interpret the results? What does something really? 3 people did it, 2 didn't.
So like an analysis, which we didn't even touch on really. Yep. So okay, that's great.
Sure. Someone in the back had their hand up.
Well, that was analysis. I want to know what do you do with all this data once you have it?
Oh, sure. So, and I think I should stop here and let everyone go home too. But let's talk about it right after this. There's probably one beer left, and then I can go.
But that's also, I think, good feedback for our next shorter presentation.